I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know where I was going, and I've told all my family this. I was most scared I've probably ever been in my life.
For years, the Gosselin family was America's reality TV fairy tale. 8 adorable kids, a picture-perfect home, and a mom who seemed to have it all under control. But behind those perfectly staged episodes, something far darker was brewing.
Visited me once. It was about for 30 minutes, and the entire time all she did was lecture me and told me that I destroyed our family.
Now, for the first time in years, Collin Gosselin, Jon and Kate's son, is speaking out. And what he says about his mom isn't just heartbreaking, it's shattering the image millions once believed. How did the once tight-knit family end up fractured beyond recognition? What really happened to Collin when the cameras weren't rolling? Today, we uncover the truth.
I love my siblings very, very much. I would never hurt them. I would never trash their names in the media. I think if we knew each other today, we'd be very good friends.
Collin breaks his silence. For years, Collin Gosselin's voice was missing from the public conversation about the most famous family in reality TV history. Fans of Jon and Kate +8 watched him grow from a playful toddler to a bright young boy, and then suddenly, he was gone. His absence from the show and from public appearances became one of the series' biggest mysteries. Explanations were vague, rumors were rampant, and the truth seemed to be locked away behind the polished image Kate Gosselin continued to present to the world. That's why Collin's sudden return to the spotlight, not in a TV special, but in a deeply personal TikTok post, hit so hard. The video wasn't flashy. There were no dramatic graphics or voiceovers, just a slideshow of old family photos, snapshots of the Gosselin children in their early years, smiling and standing side by side. Across one of the pictures, Collin had written, "Born to be a team, us against the world, forced apart." For longtime fans, it was more than just a sentimental throwback. Those few words carried years of unresolved pain, estrangement, and longing. It was a public admission that the Gosselin family, the team millions of viewers once adored, had been broken apart, not by distance or time, but by something far more personal. In the caption, Collin expanded on his feelings. Forced apart, pitted against each other. All the fame and money in the world, but what about kids being kids? The tears I shed behind closed doors, thinking about the memories we could have shared. I love you guys. The message was directed to his 7 siblings, twin sisters Maddie and Kara, and his fellow sextuplets, Alexis, Aiden, Leah, Joel, and Hannah. And it was clear this wasn't just a moment of nostalgia. It was a plea. Collin's words painted a vivid picture of what he believes was taken from him. A normal childhood, free from manipulation and division. He spoke of fame not as a blessing, but as a thief. Something that stole the innocence of youth and replaced it with fractured relationships and constant tension. In just a few sentences, he managed to dismantle the myth of the picture-perfect Gosselin household, replacing it with something far more complicated. The old family photos he included weren't random. They seemed to be chosen carefully, almost as a quiet reminder to his siblings of the bond they once shared before the divide. To those on the outside, the images stirred memories of the show's early days, birthday parties, coordinated outfits, and big group hugs. But in the context of Collin's message, those same images became bittersweet. They were no longer proof of a happy home, but artifacts of a time that, according to him, was already fractured beneath the surface. Collin also hinted at one of the most contentious elements of the Gosselin family's story, that his mother, Kate, told the siblings the story one way, while his own experience was entirely different. This wasn't just about growing apart over time. It was about being deliberately separated, about having his truth overshadowed by a narrative he says, wasn't his. The post ended without anger, without direct accusations, just love for the brothers and sisters he rarely sees, and a hope, however faint, for reconnection. But as heartfelt as the message was, it was still only a glimpse into what Collin had endured. But Collin's cryptic words only scratched the surface, because when he finally sat down for an interview, the details he revealed were even more disturbing. Life inside the containment room. When Collin finally decided to speak openly about his childhood, one of the most shocking revelations he made was about a place he called the containment room. According to him, this wasn't just a regular bedroom or a timeout space, it was a locked room in the basement of the family home. He alleges that his mother, Kate Gosselin, had it built specifically for the purpose of isolating him as punishment. Collin describes it in haunting detail: a small mattress on the floor, a tiny window in the corner, security cameras mounted to monitor him, and a bolt lock on the outside of the door to ensure he couldn't leave. The way he tells it, this was no ordinary disciplinary measure. It was a place meant to keep him completely cut off from the rest of the household. But the allegations go even further. Collin claims that during certain punishments, his hands and feet were zip-tied together, the lights were turned off, and the cameras would remain trained on him in the dark. He says this happened multiple times, describing the treatment as both physically aggressive and verbally abusive. In his telling, the experience wasn't just restrictive, it was terrifying. The room, he says, became a symbol of fear, a place where he learned that speaking out or disobeying could lead to complete isolation. For fans of Jon and Kate +8, these descriptions are especially jarring. The Gosselin home had always been portrayed as lively and warm, a place where the chaos of raising 8 children was handled with structure and discipline. But Collin's account painted a drastically different picture of what happened away from the cameras, one that seemed to validate long-standing whispers among viewers about why he had disappeared from the show and public life for so long. Kate's lawyer has repeatedly denied the allegations that she ever intentionally harmed Collin. Representatives for Kate said that these matters were taken out of context or misrepresented, and that she did what she believed was best at the time. But when they denied these allegations, Kate's representatives were vague with their denials, failing to speak directly to the specific claims regarding the locked room, zip ties, or video footage. This vagueness allowed for conjecture, and for many, it has served only to bolster Collin's credibility. Adding to this public doubt is the fact that Collin's story corresponds with some statements made by his sister Hannah, who supported his claim that Collin was often isolated from the rest of the siblings. She testified that he was not allowed to eat meals at the table or play with them and was singled out for punishment while the rest of them were fine. For Collin, speaking about the containment room was not just reliving an awful memory. It was taking back his truth. He had spent too many years in silence, with his absence explained in a way he says were dishonest. By detailing the specifics of his alleged treatment, he was no longer just a missing piece of the Gosselin puzzle. He was the one putting that puzzle together himself. But what makes this story even more tragic is that Collin's suffering didn't happen in isolation. It happened while the rest of his siblings were just upstairs, living a very different reality. Forced apart from his siblings. For most kids, siblings are built-in companions, the people you eat with, play with, and grow up alongside. But for Collin Gosselin, those basic parts of childhood were taken away. According to him, his isolation wasn't just about being in the containment room. It extended into everyday life in ways that cut him off from the family unit entirely. Collin says he was deliberately kept apart from his brothers and sisters, even when he wasn't being punished. He recalls eating meals at different times than they did, sitting alone instead of at the family table. Playtime, a normal part of bonding for most kids, was off-limits. While the other children played outside together, Collin says he was kept indoors or in a separate space. He wasn't allowed to join family activities or outings, leaving him to watch from a distance or miss them entirely. This wasn't just about physical separation, it was about emotional distance. In his words, it created a sense that he didn't belong, that he was somehow different from the rest of the siblings. Collin's experiences suggest a deliberate effort to keep him apart, rather than a temporary or situational separation. For him, these years weren't filled with the chaos and connection of a large family. Instead, they were marked by loneliness and a constant reminder that he was on the outside looking in. In his emotional TikTok message, Collin put those feelings into words. Forced apart, pitted against each other. It wasn't just a reference to the physical distance, it was a claim that someone, namely his mother, had actively created a rift between him and the rest of the children. He has suggested that Kate told them her version of events, one that painted him in a certain light, while his own reality was vastly different. This, Collin believes, planted seeds of mistrust and distance that remain to this day. The fallout of that division didn't disappear when Collin grew older. In fact, it followed him into adulthood. Now 21, he lives with his father, Jon Gosselin, along with his sister Hannah, the only sibling who broke away from Kate's household to join him. The rest of the sextuplets, as well as older twins Maddie and Kara, still live with or remain closely aligned with Kate. While he claims that estrangement has set in and is very deep, Collin's love for his siblings has been unaltered. In that post, he wrote, "I will always love them more than anything." He said that he cries thinking of all those memories they could never make together, such as birthdays, family holidays, or late-night talks. It is a type of grief that arises from the loss of something never truly open for experience. Collin is rather doubly tormented with pain, one from the way he was treated and another from feeling a family bond being robbed of him. There is both sadness and yearning in his words, a poignant reminder that, no matter how distant they have been pushed away from each other, his siblings will always remain a piece of him. It's a connection built not just by blood, but by a shared history he refuses to forget. And for Collin, holding on to that love might be the only bridge left to a future where reconciliation is still possible. Deep down, he knows that family ties, even broken ones, can be mended if both sides are willing to meet halfway. Until that day comes, his hope remains quietly alive, waiting for the moment when the walls between them finally fall. Yet for all the emotional distance, one sibling in particular refused to let Collin face it alone, and her actions changed everything. Hannah's stand and the escape to Jon. While most of Collin's siblings have remained quiet, one sister decided she couldn't stay silent or stay put any longer. Hannah Gosselin, another of the sextuplets, witnessed firsthand the way her brother was treated and says she couldn't stand by and watch it happen. She has confirmed Collin's accounts of being kept apart from the rest of the family, eating separately, and being locked away. Hannah says she often saw him excluded from normal childhood experiences, and the sight of it weighed heavily on her. It wasn't just the isolation itself, but the way it seemed to single him out. In her words, Collin's treatment didn't feel like the kind of discipline other children received. It felt like something deeper, something meant to keep him in his place. Hannah recalls moments when the rest of the family would be together, and Collin would be missing. Even as kids, she says, it was impossible not to notice the difference in how he was handled. By 2018, Hannah decided she couldn't live that way anymore. At just a teenager, she made the bold and difficult decision to leave her mother's home and move in with her father, Jon Gosselin. This was no small choice. Kate had primary custody of the children, and Jon's public image had been shaped by years of tabloid headlines portraying him as unreliable. But for Hannah, the decision wasn't about public perception. It was about her own emotional well-being and, in some ways, about being closer to Collin. Not long after Hannah's move, Collin's situation began to change. At the time, he was living in a facility that Kate had placed him in, allegedly for behavioral issues. Jon has publicly claimed that Collin reached out to him for help, prompting a custody battle. Eventually, Jon won full custody, and Collin joined Hannah in their father's home. This marked the first major fracture in the Gosselin sibling unit, two of the sextuplets living with Jon, the others remaining with Kate. For Hannah, life with Jon was everything she says she had been missing. She described it in one word: normal. It meant a whole lot in just that one word. No more strict schedules and constant filming. There would be no pressure to maintain a brand-friendly image. With Jon, there were no cameras to follow her every move, no strict scripts for how the family should appear. Here, she could simply express her thoughts as herself, without the fear of punishment for breaking the rules. It was not just comfort, it was security for Collin. He was not excluded from family meals or locked behind a door anymore. In Jon's house, he has the freedom to be part of a household again, to rebuild trust and relationships without feeling like an outsider in his own family. This change did not solve everything. Emotional scars left after all the experiences do not disappear just because you have a new home. But it was the beginning for both Hannah and Collin to a life where they would finally be heard, where they could begin to heal. But even with a new life away from Kate, the damage left by years of separation and public scrutiny continues to shape the Gosselin family's story. The family that may never heal. In the years since Jon and Kate's divorce, the Gosselin household has split into two distinct worlds, and Jon admits those worlds rarely, if ever, collide. He has openly said he hasn't seen all 8 of his children together in years. For him, this isn't just the natural drift that happens when kids grow up. He blames Kate for actively restricting communication between the children who live with him and those who remain in her home. What was once a tightly knit group of siblings, the team Collin spoke about in his TikTok post, has eroded into silence and distance. That silence is more than physical separation. It's the absence of shared experiences, of knowing the small details of each other's lives. Birthdays pass without group celebrations. Milestones go unacknowledged by half the family. Even holidays, once central to the Gosselin brand on television, no longer serve as a time to reunite. For Jon, the estrangement is heartbreaking. For Collin, it's proof of the lasting impact of the years, he says, were spent being kept apart. Kate, for her part, has defended her decisions over the years. When questioned about why Collin was institutionalized and kept separate from his siblings, she has framed it as an act of protection. For herself, for the family, and even for Collin. She has pointed to what she describes as his behavioral issues, claiming they created challenges for the rest of the household. In past statements, her representatives have insisted that she did what she felt was necessary, even if it was misunderstood from the outside. But Collin has a very different view. He has consistently countered that there was never a true diagnosis to justify placing him in a facility, and that the decision was not about treatment, but about removing him from the home. Jon has backed this up, saying it took him years to find out where Collin was, and then more time to win custody. A memory that Collin has described as requiring no need and extremely malignant, not exclusively African to his mother, but also to the relative bonds with his siblings. As an adult now, Collin has started to construct his own life entirely divorced from Gosselin. He's been able to walk away from the life of reality TV and even start his own business, pressure washing. His social media depicts a light side, but also messages dripping in sentimentality, usually aimed at his siblings. He even, in his most emotional public statements, rarely lashed out but speaks more with a string of grief, longing, and quiet resilience, as if determined that bitterness should not define him. The question lingers above the Gosselin family. Will there be that much awaited reunion? After all these years of the gulf separating them, conflicting tales, and emotional scars embedded, it is difficult, if not impossible, to answer that. Collin's decision to speak out will now go beyond secrecy about his story, but it only makes clearer how long into the fractures go. Each new revelation feels like another layer peeled back, exposing wounds that never truly healed. And with every public word, the chances of bridging that distance seem to grow even slimmer. What was once a private family matter has become a saga watched by millions. Now, every move they make will be weighed not just by each other, but by the court of public opinion. And if there's one thing Collin's journey shows, it's that the cost of reality TV fame doesn't end when the cameras stop rolling. If you found Collin's story eye-opening, make sure to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more deep dives into the untold stories behind reality TV's biggest families. And don't go just yet. Click the next video on your screen to uncover even more shocking revelations you won't see anywhere else.